Every motorsport fan has idly dreamed about creating a race circuit around roads that they know. We just can't help ourselves. In my case, I grew up next to this place, a mostly abandoned Second World War airfield. So today's video is going to be an exercise in fulfilling 8-year-old me's dreams by creating a circuit here at Blackbush Airport, well, in sim racing form. This is going to be a challenge for two reasons. First of all, I've got a strong emotional connection to this place, having spent thousands of hours here getting into trouble as a kid, so I want to get it right. But the second reason is I really don't know what I'm doing. Knowing very little about the process ahead, I thought it was probably safe to start by sketching out some ideas for the track layout on a scale plan of the site. Mixed with the location scouting you saw in the introduction and an increasingly loose grip on what I would consider a plausible layout, I finally meandered towards this design. Having a rough idea of where I would want things like the escape roads, grandstands, gravel traps and barriers proved surprisingly useful later on when the size of the task felt a little bit overwhelming. Intuitively, the circuit starts out on the still in use main runway before entering the decreasing radius Turn 1 Hertford Bridge, which was the airfield's name during the war. The tarmac makes its way across the site of the present-day control tower and aircraft storage before meeting the hopefully tricky chicane at the end of the main runway. We leave the confines of the still actually being used airfield through the sweeping Turn 6, ignoring the clumsy chicane I drew on the map, which was frankly terrible, and meet the not quite flat-out Turn 7, named for the cul-de-sac that would inevitably meet its demise to make way for a nice, luxurious gravel trap. Turn 8 is a big stopping point before the flat-out in almost everything Turn 9, which is named after the fog dispersal system tested here during the war. I'm not overselling it when I tell you that they essentially trialled using flamethrowers to combat the fog. Google it. The complex through turns 10, 11 and 12 brings us onto the current location of Blackbush car auctions, rattling down the length of the site until we hit the final turn, named for Bob Dylan, who played a show to 250,000 people on the site in 1978. As my parents described it, there were hippies bloody everywhere. Sounds great. With the design finalised, the real work begins. As I stated in the beginning, I don't really know what I'm doing, so I'm using a program called Racetrack Builder. Now, if you're familiar with the process of making Assetto Corsa circuits, then there's a good chance your eyes are extremely fatigued from all the rolling by now, but for everyone else, this is a relatively straightforward, if slightly quirky program that can produce some passable results. The reality is though, and I think I should really stress this, the program does have major limitations, and the final circuit that I'll be building will not be up to the same standards as a Kunos circuit or even a reasonably well put together mod. But I'm doing this for me to scratch an itch, and frankly I can't commit the thousands of hours it would take to building Blackbush from scratch. As you've seen from the visuals, things do start out pretty simply. The program can grab image and elevation data from Google, and you simply draw in the track, do a little bit of tweaking, and after a few hours of finessing, you're ready to give it your first drive in Assetto Corsa. Bugger. This is really cool. Are my controls mapped? Yes. Didn't even check that, I was so excited. Here we go, driving a circuit I've made. Something that I've been thinking about driving around here since I was a kid. This is kind of crazy. The surface is actually quite bumpy, which I'm not sure it's supposed to be. Oh, this is so cool. This is so cool. It's really difficult to tell where the corners are because there are no landmarks whatsoever. I've been dreaming about driving a car around here since I was a kid, and yeah, it's pretty bare bones at the moment, but I'm not going to pretend that this is really cool. One thing that's really surprising actually is how close everything is together. This is like a 5 kilometre long circuit, but the straights that I was worried would be too long are actually kind of sensibly sized or shorter actually, so I don't know, I guess everything looks longer on a screen. I'm not sure I can say that. Now that I've driven a few laps and the cool factor's started to wear off, I can probably be a bit more objective. There's lots about this circuit that works. The general overall layout is great, except for that chicane I put in at the top. That needs to go. Just totally ruins the flow of the track. There's a few corners I desperately need to reprofile because, well, they're a bit insane. But overall, I'm pretty happy with where things are. While driving the track for the first time was a lot of fun, the reality is the work had only just begun. The first problem to be dealt with was the track mesh, which was completely rubbish if I'm honest, and needed some significant reprofiling to make the circuit more drivable. And then there's the small matter of turning this barren wasteland into something that looks like a racing venue. Unsurprisingly, this took days and days of work, so naturally we're going to skip over all of the detail and make the most of this gratuitous montage. Of course, this is the fun part, the bit where you can flex your creative muscles, well, whichever ones you use to operate your left mouse button, that is. And if I'm completely honest, as the build progressed, the sense of excitement was starting to get the better of me. And by the point where I ran out of time and had to commit to making this video, I was like a commuter waiting for the station coffee shop to open on a cold morning. So that was it, that's all I could do. Time to give it a drive. I cannot describe the sense of relief. Let's give it a drive. That looks so good, I can't wait. Down into turn 1 for the first time, and there's such a sense of place now. Weirdly, it doesn't look like an airport anymore. When I drove around it last time, it looked like I was driving around an airfield with some white lines painted on, and all of a sudden it looks like a racetrack. It is crazy to think that 20-something years ago as a kid I was cycling around these runways, imagining what it'd be like for a race car to take those very routes, and now I'm doing it for myself, and it's a strange experience, honestly. It doesn't look like Blackbush anymore, for the most part. But you catch glimpses of it, you catch moments that remind you that you're on a Second World War airbase, that you're traversing what has been common land for 70 years now, nearly. When I first drove this circuit, I was totally overwhelmed by the cool factor, and I probably wasn't very objective at all, and I've got exactly the same problem again. It's difficult to convey the sort of mixed emotions about all of this. For one, I'm extremely proud this is the realization of something that's been rattling around my head since I was like, I don't know, 7 years old or something. But at the same time, I know this is just scraping the surface and, you know, using Racetrack Builder's kind of a bit of a cheat, and it's nothing compared to the sheer effort that's put into it by all of the proper modders. But I don't know, the first part there is winning, the pride. So then, what did I learn? For one, making a race circuit in Assetto Corsa, even using a cheat solution like Racetrack Builder, is still surprisingly difficult and really time-consuming, which only goes to highlight just how much work is involved for those that actually do it properly. But here's the thing, most people just don't have the time for that, and I have to be honest, this is one of the most fun projects I've undertaken in a long time. Honestly, I really hope that comes across in the video. Now, the circuit that I've produced is still very much a work in progress, and there's so much left to do. In fact, there's more that's bad about it than there is good at the moment, and I guess that's just the natural consequence of working to a deadline. But you know what? I'm going to keep chipping away at this when I get those precious free moments, because this was surprisingly rewarding. Speaking of rewarding, hopefully next week's video is just that. Though the premise, wherein I see just what I can learn by driving 1,000 laps of an unfamiliar sim, with unfamiliar equipment and in an unfamiliar car, does sound a bit torture-y by way of comparison. If you want to see that important piece of science, then make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I guess all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.